So this is the video about HubSpot to Celigo integration. Uh, the purpose is to connect it with NetSuite, and we are going to discuss one use case, that is what happens if one field in HubSpot updates, for example, a phone number of a contact, and we want to update only that field in maybe NetSuite and through Celigo iPaaS. Now, this is the use case which we received from our client saying that, hey, this is what exactly we want. We are not looking at the overall, but we are just looking at one field update. Is it possible to just do that? I mean, it is helpful for all kind of integrations and all kind of updates, but this is the use case we are going to go after. We are also going to show you the how it looks in HubSpot, how to create, the webhook in HubSpot, and how to also use it in Celigo. So yeah, we have both practical and theoretical. What we're going to show you. The problem I'm trying to solve here is uh, the integration between HubSpot to NetSuite using Celigo. The core challenge, like I mentioned, a single field changes in HubSpot, contacts, phone number updates, and NetSuite must reflect it immediately. Full batch exports are too slow and too expensive at 500K records, right? For example, this is an example of a 500K records. It could be more or less depending upon your contact database or size. The expensive comes from the point that you have APIs limits, and we will also discuss the API limits, and we're also going to discuss the error handling mechanism or the error architecture. Right now, the old way is to HubSpot periodically dumps all contacts to Celigo, slow, wasteful. It causes API quota exhaustion at scale. A change sits unsynced for hours, right? And then the new way is only the changed field triggers a notification real time. Near real time, Celigo doesn't, different differ the entire record, only processes what actually changed. Now, it could be exactly your use case, but it does not mean that only one change will update. I mean, as many change you have, it changes instantly, right? It happens in less than 1 second. So, how the event system works. So basically, the key principle here is, HubSpot fires one webhook event per changed property, not per changed record, right? So we have to look at a very important part is property versus record, not the entire record, but only the property. If two fields change on a contact simultaneously, two separate webhook events are fired. Now this is where you have to look at your webhook, kind of API limits, each carrying only the field name, the new value, and the contact ID. So the traditional batch approach used to be HubSpot dumps all contacts periodically, even change records as transferred, hours of delay, uh, you know, before NetSuite sees the update, API quota exhaustion, and Celigo must entire, you know, record to find changes. The current architecture is only the contact that changed triggers notification. Only the field that changed is in the payload. Sub-second latency to Celigo listener. Zero extra API calls for unchanged fields. Dramatic reduction in processing at record size of around 500K scale. We are discussing two integration approaches here only, which is Webhook via private app with HubSpot and the native Celigo HubSpot connector. So the latency in the webhook is, less than 1 second. Trigger is event driven, event based instant. So HubSpot pushes events to Celigo HTTP listener URL the moment the field changes on a contact record. It is best for single field changes, phone, email status like that, not for bulk sync or full record imports. However, on the second one, which is the bulk path, Celigo pulls HubSpot on a scheduled interval, like for example every 16 minutes or 15 minutes, to retrieve recently modified records. So this is best for bulk sync, nightly full record imports, 500K batch, not for real-time SLAs. It could be, it could be less than 5 seconds, and like I said, every 60 minutes or nightly, this kind of bulk path is what it's updated here. So these are the two path structures. For real time, we have HubSpot field change, private app fires webhook, Celigo HTTP listener listens, native connector full record using get uh, writes to NetSuite. Now the bulk path is Celigo scheduled flow, pull HubSpot, modified since for the time. In this case, could be 6 seconds or 15 minutes. Batch process all changes. Upsert NetSuite customer records. Every 60 minutes or nightly 500,000 records is the example that we have taken. Single field update step by step. Now let's see how this happens step by step. So HubSpot CRM uses a user basically updates phone number on the record and change detected by HubSpot eventing. Step 2 is private app evaluates active webhook subscription for contact property change on phone. For example, we are taking the phone number, right? So match found, webhook fires. And step 3 here is payload assembles and posted to Celigo HTTP listener URL. So HTTP post fired. At Celigo level, HTTP listener receives payload, returns 200 OK within 5 seconds, event acknowledged. Celigo again, flow logic extracts object ID, property name, property value, data is passed as the output. Celigo again, here this is optional, get full contact from HubSpot via native connected using object ID. Then it goes for transforming data to NetSuite customer schema. Within NetSuite, import writes updated phone field to customer record, and then Celigo flow runs marked as success. So native connector versus bulk and follow up path. Bulk schedule sync, Celigo pulls HubSpot on a schedule interval to retrieve all recently modified contacts. So mostly it's getting repetitive. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, this is how native connector basically works, right? So what we see here is there are different scenarios: webhook versus native connector. Webhooks are light, native connectors are too heavy. And likewise, we can do comparison between nightly pull records, a full record, bulk sync, follow up data, batch record 500 contacts, or real time SLAs in 5 seconds. So this is what we have between comparison between webhook and native connector. Only option is, and this is very critical. At times, companies want, okay, we want to see this changes in less than 1 second, and this is what HubSpot does if we use the webhook. Now let's talk about the error architecture. We do have this architecture in place, which will not be visible in this slide. Maybe in case you want, you can let us know. We'll share it with you separately. So we have looked at error at three different stages because right now we are looking at three different applications. One is HubSpot, second is Celigo, and then we have NetSuite. Within HubSpot delivery, we'll be able to see uh, there is a section which we'll show you after this slide is over. And hey, this is where all the errors are, right? And this is what the error is. As for example, failures between HubSpot and Celigo is what is being shown here in the HubSpot at the HubSpot level. So we have HubSpot Private App, Webhook subscription tab. Then auto retry happens 10 times over 3 hours. Then it is gone, right? Then it is not happens again. When it comes to Celigo flow processing, now here we see issues between Celigo and NetSuite. Failures within Celigo after payload is received, payload parse errors, data transformation errors, follow up get to HubSpot failing. So between HubSpot and Celigo and NetSuite, we can see all the errors within the Celigo level. And then we have NetSuite failures when Celigo attempts to write to NetSuite. NetSuite customer record not found, field validation failure, required field missing, duplicate conflict, API timeout. Right, so this is how the errors is handled. If you get this query about, hey, how is the error handled when it comes to these three tools. Now we have the retry behavior, like we saw earlier, that if all 10 retry fails uh, within like 3 hours, the event is permanently dropped. HubSpot does not queue events indefinitely. So, there will be like 10 retries, 3 hours, it's gone, right? So, immediate retries within a few minutes, 4 to 10 exponential back off over approx 3 years, and then event permanently dropped. And then you have to basically manually do the recovery. One thing to note here is that HubSpot does not send email alerts for webhook failures. Monitoring is actually very manual, right? Or via third-party uptime monitoring on the Celigo endpoint URL. Right, so this is where we see all this thing happening. Then we have error monitoring summary. Errors are very critical part because this when you start syncing, the next thing actually comes is the errors, right? Because there might be errors coming up on and off based on how things are moving, the kind of data that you have, and different fields out there. So, moving to when error occurs at all these levels, where to monitor, how does the retry happens. So, as you can see, retry is happening at mostly HubSpot level. At the Celigo and NetSuite, is actually manual retry when you get an error, right? So escalation path for sync failure, Celigo email alert fires. So you get the notification when it happens at Celigo level or at NetSuite level, but not at the HubSpot level because HubSpot is doing the sync. Maybe if you find that hey, this particular field is not syncing, then you'll have to go inside HubSpot and look at the how things are moving in HubSpot. So this is very critical in terms of understanding their API rate limits. We have taken example of 500,000 records where the architecture decisions get a bit expensive, right? Now note this that a professional plan of this size, daily API call limit provides zero headroom when in all contacts update daily. This might not be the case with all the companies. Of course, not all contacts are updating daily. Every webhook follow-up get consumes from the same pool. Enterprise plan is effectively required for this kind of a volume. So we have professional plan in HubSpot. We have enterprise plan. If you look at daily API calls, uh, the way it is structured inside HubSpot, right? And when does it really reset? Burst rate limit also is available. Webhook events, per second. So if you see up to 10,000 in enterprise level is available. So this is the limit that you have to keep in mind while doing sync. You cannot just start syncing for this kind of records. And this is basically an enterprise level account where we have this many records. So max event subscription per private apps, 25 subscriptions. Celigo endpoint must respond within 5 seconds of delivery, and it or is stated as failure. So and then we have the other points. Rate limit impact by architecture choice. So if you go only webhook, then you are basically, and of course having no follow get method, then you have zero additional API calls, right? Then low webhook delivery is not counted against API quota. So this is used for simple field writes where webhook payload has all needed data. Second is high when it comes to webhook plus follow up get API gets consumed, one get event equals 500,000 per day, right? So this is the you have to be very careful. You have to use it sparingly. Only when full contract record is truly needed for NetSuite writes. Next, we have native connector, which is there in Celigo available. It is very controlled, so used for bulk sync, tune batch size, and pole frequency. Now we now have a look at the Celigo rate limits and capacity. This is these are the limits that you see in Celigo. And then we have operational monitoring stack, right? So web delivery, failures, Celigo flow, error count, all this is available, and who can basically on monitor. This is the basic a typical plan that companies usually follow, right? And in terms of operationally, how to monitor this entire three application stack. So HubSpot has no dead letter queue for dropped webhook events. Once dropped for 10 retries, recovery requires manual identification, and we do need to have operational monitoring stack. So the key principles here are HubSpot fires one event per changed property, never designed for whole record sync when a single field is all that needs to move. So these are the six key principles. You can pause the video and look at it. Now we will go to the uh, how we where we create this HubSpot API or the API legacy app. So within HubSpot we are in the settings, and in settings we get legacy apps. We do create legacy apps right here. So we can create maybe this is a name that you have to give, this is the description. Now this is very important where you have to define the scope. So you have to define the objects that you are exposing for change. So let me just go to contact object. So we have the read, and then we have contacts. Right, I'm selecting the CRM objects contacts read, CRM objects contacts right. I'm not selecting the schema contact read or schema contacts right. It's just an example. We also have the option for companies. Maybe we can also say, hey, the company updates also. This is just the trial. So we have CRM objects companies read, CRM objects companies write, update. Likewise, we can also use maybe deal object, any change that happens inside deal. So all those things is available. And then we have create app. This gives us auth tokens. Then it gives us the log. So this is where we get all the error messages or any kind of how things are moving, how many times it has been hit, and this is where we set up the webhook. So this is where you have to create this. This name you can change. This is created like that. And within Celigo, you can go to resources, connections, create connections. This is what you see here is the native integration, not the webhook. So we can just say a token. These are two different things that I'm showing you right now. What I showed in the HubSpot was, I'll just copy this. I'll do a test connection. Oh, sorry. So your connection is working nice, great job. And from this is where you can start using the connection. Now I'm connecting the native app. We do have an option. Let me share with you the other URL from. So Celico does offer very detailed information about this, how to connect with HubSpot, right? So you have all these options available. However, when it comes to the API connectivity or the native application that we have used right now, right? This is where we do all the connection. So this is the test connection. As you can see, we have the HubSpot API here. It's connected to this. However, this is a different connectivity altogether. You might get confused that hey, why are we creating a webhook thing here, and why are we using the native app here? For other information, you can just visit Celigo, and this gives they give better information here. Right. That's all that I have for this video. I'll come back to you with more detailed examples very soon. Thanks.